So, officially welcome to getting the information and resources you need for Child Care Operating Expense Reduction Act, Reduction Grant, known as CORE. This is brought to you by the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services, as well as our partners at Child Care Aware of New Hampshire. It's being provided on Monday, October 30th, 2023. Please make note that if there's any changes to the program, updates, or information, those will all be posted in the future on the New Hampshire Connections website address that is listed in this document. Again, the PowerPoint, the recording of the call, and the FAQs will be at the www.newhampshireconnections.org under the Provider tab, and you will notice there's a new page called New Hampshire Provider Grant Funds, and that's where you need to go. I'm Diane Chase. I'm the Assistant Bureau Chief in the Bureau of Child Development and Head Start Collaboration. I'd like to give you a little overview of our webinar today, as well as welcome you back. As I said earlier, we haven't been together in a while. We're excited to be introducing this grant program, as well as another one that is coming right behind it. So stay tuned for that one. This webinar is to give you an overview of how to do the application, what expenses are covered in this particular grant program, and to start to hopefully answer some of your questions. I do want to put a little caveat right here, which is some of you who are listening to this now, we've had approximately 30 applications. Some of you are going to say, oh my gosh, I need to change my application, or I need to get my application back. Not to worry. We've gone through all of them. We see where there's some clarification that's going to be needed, and we'll be reaching out to you and letting you know what you need to do to get those applications in shape so they're ready to be submitted officially. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to talk about the actual core grant, what it's designed to fund, how to apply for those funds, and then what to expect and the accountability piece. And again, hopefully answer some of your questions. So let's talk about the steps. So the program application, and I will switch that. Oop. I said 2024. That's not 2024. I'm jumping ahead. I'm thinking state fiscal year. It's 2023. So the program opened on, actually, it should flip that. It should say that it opened on the 24th. But the application period ends on 12/1/2023. It ends promptly at 4:30 on December 1st. Please keep that in mind because it will automatically close. And when it automatically closes, it can't be reopened. That includes that all your documentation has to be in, and we'll talk about that. Then as soon as your application comes in, whether it came in last week or whether it comes in on the 1st, we're going to start reviewing those on a rolling receipt or rolling application process. That doesn't mean we'll be notifying you, but that means that as soon as your application comes in, we go through it, we do 2 checks, and what we call the integrity check. Hey, are all the questions answered? Is it appropriate? That sort of thing. Did you put the right information? Have you got your vendor number? All of that sort of thing. And then we go back and match the documentation and do a larger review. Those are done by the 12/11. We'll be done with all those reviews. Then we're going to be working on grant announcements and sending out the agreements. There'll be an agreement return period. Keep this in mind. All agreements need to be back in by December 22nd. Then between December 22nd and the end of the year, we'll be going through each one of those, making sure that the agreement is completely signed, prepping our invoicing. You don't have to do invoicing on this one. We will produce the invoice, and then we'll be submitting those for payment. And the payment period will begin right after the 1st of the year. Now, what is it? So this is 3.596, 400 million to provide direct beneficiary awards to eligible child care providers. What does that mean? This is grant awards directly to you all. This money was came through the governor's office for emergency response and recovery dollars. These are also happen to be ARPA funds, a little bit different ARPA funds than we did with ARPA stabilization, so they have a different purpose. This purpose is to enable providers to strengthen their workforce by reducing operating costs in the program space. And I'm going to go back and talk about that. And by investing in workforce retention and recruitment. Now, here's the first, one of the most important things. To provide reimbursement for operating expenses incurred between March 31st, 2021 and September 30th, 2023 in the program space. So what that means is this isn't for any expenses that you incurred prior to March 30th, 2021. March 3rd, 2021. I can't read my own writing. And September 30th, 2023. It is for that time period only. It is not for things going forward. So those of you who submitted applications and said, I need the grant before we can incur the expense, this is not that grant. And this is for things such as long-term mortgage, lease payments, maintenance, repairs and renovations, etc. We'll go over those in a little bit more detail. So what is it not intended for? It is not intended for income loss recovery. It's not intended for staff-related expenses. It's for operating expenses within the program. Think of program facility. So it is not for payroll. It's not for benefits for staff. It's not for payroll taxes. It's not for staff childcare tuition. There is another grant program that is coming out, it doesn't cover payroll, but it covers benefits and things like that. But this is not for that. For those of you who put those in, this is not the grant for that. So we'll be kicking that back to you with a note saying that you need to change that. It's also, of course, not to supplant other funding or fund something that's already been funded. So if you already paid for example, those operating expenses with your CRISP money, your CRISA money, your ARPA stabilization money, or even the quality money, this is you can't double dip. That's called double dipping. So this has to be things that you have not recovered in the past. And it's also not intended, as I said, to pay for future expenses. It's only for expenses that were incurred between March 3rd of 2021 and September 30th of 2023. So who's eligible to apply? Let's start there. So if we jump in, we say licensed, full day, full week, early childhood or out of school time childcare programs. Now, some of you have asked, what does a full day, full week mean? What that means is that programs that are a Mother's Day out kind of program are not eligible for this. This is a licensed and childcare program. Now, I know some of you run shorter or bridge days. Please reach out to us and ask if you are eligible. But this is for childcare providers that are running those full-time programs. It is also for New Hampshire license exempt facilities and family child care centers. It also includes those child license exempt home-based that fall under the considered a family child care with 3 or less children. So just to reiterate, who's eligible? Licensed programs and out of school time child care centers programs, New Hampshire license exempt facilities and license exempt home providers, and family child care centers. So that being said, who's not? Programs that are not currently open. Now, that does not mean if you are temporarily closed because you have an extreme staffing shortage, or if you're temporarily closed because of, for example, COVID or something to that effect, you are not ineligible. Please reach out to us. We need to have a reopen date. and we can talk through what that means in terms of timing. We say Head Start and Early Start programs are not eligible. That's the regular daytime Head Start and Early Start. However, if you have wraparound childcare, that licensed wraparound childcare period is eligible. Public school operated programs, that doesn't mean that if you are an out of school time program that operates in a public school, that does not exclude you as long as you fall under that license exempt facility or license program. What it does mean, if it's a public school operating their own out of school time program or early childhood program, they are not eligible. Part day or part week early childhood or enrichment programs that are not considered child care providers. Again, that goes back to what we were talking about before. Mother's Day out, drop-in programs, those sort of things do not count. So again, if you've got any questions about that, we're going to tell you how to reach out and ask us. Traditional summer camps, those are full or part day, unless it's expansion of a regular child care program. So it needs to have a child care license, and you're going to, what we're looking for is, and I can give an example. For example, if you run a year-round program, but in the summer you go full time, that would count as as eligible. But if you are a standalone summer camp with only a camp license, you are not eligible. So how do you apply? So let's talk about applying and submitting documentation. So first of all, there's two ways to access the application. And there's a generic link and a custom link on SurveyMonkey. And let me tell you the big difference here. The custom link allows for changes. You can save the document. You can also print the document. The generic link doesn't. In other words, if you sit down and use the generic link, which is the one that you got in the email that I sent, or you got it on the website, that's what I call a one and done, where you sit down, you do the whole grant, and then you click submit, and that's it. The custom link, you should be able to go back. But if you, one of the challenges, and I have to say this happens ironically with some of my own private emails, that's how I test it, is sometimes when we send you a generic link, it won't go through. Sometimes it's security in your server or the organization that you work with. So as a result, that not only does it not go through, but also your email is then, then your email is no longer usable. So you have to come up with a different email. So I know some of you will use a personal email, you'll use another colleague. If it's a problem with the server at your organization, it doesn't matter if you're going to use a colleague. So keep that in mind if you are sending us a message and say, hey, I need a custom link. If we've already sent it to the address that was listed in the New Hampshire Connections information system under your provider email, then I can't use that one again. But we're happy to keep trying until we get one. You can request that custom link either at our help desk link or through the CCOER grant. But please, if you put it in the email, put in the subject line that you're requesting a link, because we're also getting your documentation in that one, and we want to get you the link obviously sooner rather than later. All of the overview of the program, the FAQs, when we finish those, will be posted. The generic link, the application template, all of those sort of things, along with this webinar, are posted on the New Hampshire Connections link. Again, that's under provider, and it is under the New Hampshire Provider Grant Funds. And at the top of that page, it says, I think if you have questions or requests or something to that effect, we'll look at it in a minute. It says, click here to be added to our grant program information list. Just click on that right there, and you can ask questions as well. Again, I want to emphasize that the applications, it closes at 4:30 p.m. on Friday, December 1st. So that's it. It's over. So I want to emphasize that it's really important that you get those in on time because it will automatically close. Applications, like I said, are going to be reviewed on a rolling basis. And if we run into something, and we'll reach out with questions or concerns before they're fully reviewed. If you, for some reason, are ineligible, or you appear to be ineligible, that goes to the grant committee. They will take a look at that and then notify you if you are ineligible. We will, sooner you get it in, the better. And it may be that your ineligibility is because you incorrectly provided information, and then we can get that fixed. So we don't want you to miss the opportunity. So let's take a look at the application. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And I'm going to jump over and we're going to walk through the application. Bear with me here a moment. Okay. All right. Now, hopefully, if someone can tell me if we are seeing the New Hampshire Connections, the website. Is that correct?
We are.
Okay. Super. So, New Hampshire Connections website. This is what I was talking about. It's under providers. It's under New Hampshire Provider Grant Funds. If you click right here, here is the this takes you to the request for information, as well as a place you can put any questions that you have, and you can also email us. As you scroll down the page, you will see for the first time we actually have a QR code, so you can link with your phone to the application. Not the easiest way to do it. Here's the overview and timeline, the application link. Here's an application template. You cannot apply with this application template. It's strictly to give you an idea in advance what you're going to be asked. It doesn't show you every drop-down menu. You can go into this generic application template as many times as you like. And what's going to happen after you submit the application is that you will, if you used your custom, even if you used your custom link, you're still going to get an email from us that says, and those of you who've applied haven't gotten it yet, you're going to get an email from us that says, hey, thanks for the application. We got it, and here's a copy. So we're going to download and send you back a copy so that there'll be no delay. So when you click on here, it takes you, see if I can get rid of all this other stuff. I don't know if you all can see that, but I certainly can. No, I can't get rid of it, and I can't figure out how to do it. Wait, oh, right there. Ah, okay. So this is the application, and make sure that you read all this information. The biggest thing I want to say on here is these questions are not optional. So those of you who submitted a grant who didn't tell me what you're going to do with the money or didn't complete all the information, you're going to get yours back and have to do it. Couple things. County is incredibly important. What do we mean when we say doing as you're doing business? For some of you, you have programs that are part of a larger organization or who we write the check to. The overarching organization has a different name. So for example, my program name might be Chase's Child Care, but when you get down to the organization name, my program could be owned by Chase International. And so this is where some of you are only going to have just your program name, but you're also going to, I'll tell you why you repeat it below. This is the town where your program is. Zip code. This is important. Who are we going to reach out to if we've got a problem with your application or if we have to ask you certain questions, etc.? If the program director is different, please list that here because that helps us in the New Hampshire Connections information system verify the program. This is where we talk about the organization name if it's different than the DBA above. And where I really want to emphasize this, folks, is this is the organization name that your vendor number is really under. And again, it could be Chase's Child Care is the name of my program, but if it's Chase International that owns it, if it's different than the one above, you don't necessarily have to put anything in here. Most of you repeat it. So you might put, if it's Chase's Child Care, then you're going to put Chase's Child Care here as well. And the address, that is absolutely fine. This is the address of the organization, not of the program. So if it is different. Again, if there's someone else that we need to contact that's related to the organization, one of the simplest when you look at this is something like, let's say a YMCA. So YMCA might have a specific program location, but we're going to talk to their corporate office about other specific questions. This is the key part. This is not optional. You have ample time between now and the grant deadline to get the state vendor number. Please, please, please go back on the state vendor website, and I'll make sure that we put the address for that, the email or web address in the FAQs. But please go on there and verify your 6-digit vendor number. It is not okay to put in here, I don't have one, I don't know what it is, I don't remember what it is. We can't pay you without that number, and it slows down the whole process for you and everyone else. Also, make sure that you know what business name it's associated with, just to give you an idea why this is important. When we submit our what's called our spreadsheet invoice, we submit it, it'll say, let's say it says Chase's Child Care. And an incorrect number here, or even a correct number, but it has a different business name. This, for our finance department, the vendor number and the business name have to match. So they can't take a leap of faith. So if I didn't put Chase International in here and I put Chase's Child Care, that's going to be a problem. So please make sure you go back and check it. If you haven't applied for one, if you're a newbie, not a problem. The application process, we'll put that in the FAQs. It's very simple, and it usually takes a couple days, and they get back to you with that that vendor number. If you are already a child care scholarship provider, you're providing child care scholarship to children through the New Hampshire Child Care Scholarship, you already have a vendor number or we wouldn't be able to pay you. So you've got that. Don't confuse that with your resource ID number, which is your child care scholarship number. This is your license number. If you don't have a license number, you would be a license exempt program. And the only way you become a license exempt program, obviously, is you're registered for a child care scholarship program, your provider. So you are either going to have potentially both of these numbers, or you're going to have at least one. If you also are a preventative and protective child care scholarship provider, that's a different resource ID number. You can pop that in here. Now, what kind of program type are you here? What you fit into the most. So you're either a licensed child care center, family group home, family child care, a license exempt facility. If you're license exempt family provider, you're going to put other here, and you're going to specify that you are a license exempt family home provider. This one is, we don't joke about it, but we joke about it. You might consider yourself a nonprofit because you're not making any money, but a nonprofit is a 501c3. Otherwise, you could be a for-profit. In other words, that you own your own business or somebody owns the business, and they are not a 501c3. These are other types of programs that you could be potentially. Now, if you're faith-based, you're also a nonprofit, but we can tell that, and it's more important that we know this. Again, this is part of our reporting requirements, so it's essential that you do that. This is also your program status as of the application day. So the day that you're filling this out, you're going to put in here, I'm open and operating, or I'm closed temporarily, and you're going to tell us why. If we have any questions, we'll get back to you on this. This is your current license capacity or your license exempt. So, for example, if you are license capacity, this is what's on your childcare license today, when you're, or not today, but when you're applying, the day you apply. It's not what you hope it's going to be. It is what the capacity. That doesn't mean you're necessarily serving all those children. You may be short-staffed and not able to serve that many children. But this is, and if you're license exempt, it's what you're approved for through local regulations. And that's the number you're going to put here. So these are pretty self-explanatory under childcare program information. The hours that you operate, are you year-round? What percentage of the enrolled children reside in New Hampshire? So that is obviously it's where your families come from. Those of you who are border programs, this isn't a test. This is just to give us an idea of how many children are sitting in programs that are from Massachusetts or Vermont or Maine, that we're also caring for within this state. Whether you maintain a wait list, how often do you update that wait list? I know some of you only update it when a child ages out. Some of you update it monthly. Some of you only update it when a child is added. Again, this is not a test. If you don't have a wait list, that's okay. We just are trying to get the answer. Then we're asking you how many children you currently have on your wait list, and how many children currently are receiving New Hampshire Child Care Scholarship out of the kiddos in your program. Now, in our enrollment and available slots, this is the question, okay? And this is the numbers. Now, if you have more than 199 in a certain category, you're not going to be able to go above that. That's all that SurveyMonkey allows you to go up to basically 200. So, but I do need you, if you have no infants, please put a 0. Otherwise, it requires us to go in and alter your application and put the 0 in. What are enrolled children? Children are enrolled that are not necessarily, they're enrolled for full-time care, but they aren't necessarily attending all the time. So this is how many are enrolled. So on the day that you are submitting this, how many kids in this particular age group do you have that are enrolled? We ask, how many available slots do you have in this? Now, what we mean in here is how many actual places that you have staffing for that are available. And then how many children do you have on a waiting list for full and part-time for those available slots? So as you can, now you're starting to see the picture here. So we look at this and we say, okay, so if they have, and we know that this isn't going to add up to your capacity, right? Because between full-time and part-time children, you may be a capacity for 100, but you may have 125 or 150 children enrolled, because obviously part-time children can mesh together to create full-time. So don't worry that we're going to add this up and say, they said they had 100 capacity, but they've got 200 children listed here. We're really looking for actually how many kiddos you're serving, how many spaces you have, how many kids you have on waiting lists on this in each of these spaces, how many part-time and full-time scholarship children. And here is the classrooms. How many open classrooms do you have in this age group, and how many closed classrooms? That is really important. And the question here is, are they closed due to staffing shortages? If they're just closed because you have decided you no longer want to serve infants, then that would be a 0. But if they're closed because you don't have enough staff, we do want to know that. So here's program staffing. And this is really, really important, again, that this all gets filled out. Those of you that are family child care providers or license exempt home providers, you are the employee. So make sure that you list yourself in here. This is how the state defines a full-time person works 35 or more hours. A part-time person works 1 to 34 hours. If you have somebody that works in a bunch of different programs, so for example, let's say I work part of the week as a part-time infant or part of the day, and the rest of the time I work as a part-time toddler, um, teacher, split me in half, put me in each place. If you have somebody that's a floater, we put a floater down here. And if they only float in certain age groups, then just put them in those age groups for approximately how much time that they work. But if you or the number, so this is the number of staff. So if you have 10 current lead teachers, um, that are full-time, they would go here. You can also split, if you have lead teachers that split into other rooms, feel free to split them up. This is to give us a snapshot of how many staff you actually have working in your programs. And this is how many openings that you have. And this is your ideal. So this does not necessarily mean, if I go back to that open and closed classrooms, if you have classrooms that are closed because you don't have staff, include those staff in here. So if I had 4 more infant and toddler full-time teachers, then my infant room would be open. Put that as an opening. We want a real snapshot of how many staff. And then for some unknown reason, it didn't come out as all, but what we did in school age, this is for all grades. So it's grades 1 through 5. Average staff wages, again, if you are a family child care provider, you need to factor in approximately how much, what you would be paid an hour, approximately. I know that's a little bit hard to figure out, but think about if, you were kidnapped by aliens or, won the lottery tonight, and you had to replace yourself, what would that person be paid an hour? You can also figure it out, approximately what you've been taking for income. But it's easier just to figure out what it would cost to replace you. And what we say is average it together. So if I have 4 current toddler teachers, full-time toddler teachers, and I am paying them at different wages, add those together, divide it by the number of teachers, and get an average number of what you're paying them per hour. Staff benefits, again, your full-time staff, what do they get? This is yes and no. Please make sure that you put yes and no in these of what you do and don't provide. And if we left something out that we didn't ask you about that you provide, for example, you'll see there isn't anything about life insurance or I don't know, I'm trying to think of some other benefits. Let's say free parking because you're in a place where most people have to pay for parking. Any of those, feel free to add here. We really want to be able to share in our reporting a snapshot of what it really looks like. Now, this is the grant request part. First of all, this is the amount of the eligible expense. You'll notice that there's 4 listings here. Expense 1, 2, 3. You have to have at least 1 in here. Otherwise, you're not asking for any money. So even if you're asking for mortgage or rent reimbursement, which there's more information that you fill out down here, you still have to put that in one of these expenses. Now, the reason that we put only 4 was because it just seemed from the feedback we got that most people aren't going to ask for more than 4 areas. However, I do want to put the caveat. If you do end up, there's more than 4 areas of expense that you want to request, you can duplicate this information in an email and we will add it. I would recommend, think about, there's only a little over 3 million. So, and we're going to get a lot of applications. So really be prudent in what you're asking for. And there probably shouldn't be any more. Now, what does this, let's remind ourselves, first of all, that it has to be an eligible expense. So it is not payroll taxes, it's not staffing expenses, it's not new construction, even though, now, could it be putting in a new playground? Yes. Could it be adding a new wing onto your program? No, because we can't pay for new construction with federal funds. But let's just say you did add an addition on your program. You can offset, and the expenses were incurred between March 3rd of 2021 and September 30th of 2023. Then you can request for reimbursement for those funds, such as the flooring, the windows, new equipment, those sort of things. So think about, it can't be the actual construction of the building, but it can be non-load bearing walls, those sort of things. And we'll clarify those more in the FAQs, but it's the same parameters that you dealt with the ARPA stabilization. You're going to briefly describe what the operational expense is. This is very important because it might say refurbishing playground. Well, or playground addition. We need to know what that is, but just briefly, what the date the expense was incurred. Now, let me clarify on this one. Again, it has to be between that March date and September 30th, 2023. It cannot be something going forward. It can't be something before that. That being said, I do want to strongly emphasize that right here, what you need to put in is the date that it was incurred. It doesn't necessarily mean the date that you paid it. And let me give you an example. For example, if you, one of your colleagues submitted an application where they had a room, some refurbishing done, I'm sorry, on the playground, and they signed the contract I believe, with the contractor in July of 2023. The work finished in September and they got the bill in October. So you might say, oh no, the expense is outside of the time period. No, they signed the contract for the work. They incurred the expense before the September 30th date. So that's really important to remember. As I put on the slides that you'll see in a minute, when in doubt, ask. Okay, so if you're concerned and you don't know if it's going to apply in a time period, but this date, the date in here should never be before that March 2021 date and never after September 30th of 2023. And in documentation, you have to provide, you're going to email it in, a scanned copy. We'll talk about that in a second. You need to provide documentation that you have not only incurred the expense, but you've paid the expense. Again, there's 4 options to do that. Down here, if you are doing, this is the total of 15 through 20. How much money are you actually asking for? And then if you're applying for the rent or the mortgage or the lease expense, this is the information, the additional information that you're putting into it. This is a key one, this right here, and then these 2 questions, and these are have been the most unanswered. So what we want to know is the idea behind this grant program is if you are being reimbursed for the previous expenses, which either means, let's say it was credit card debt that you incurred for your program, and you've documented the expenses, and now you're not going to have to pay out that $500 a month that you've been paying every month to pay off the credit card, or you're getting reimbursement for your mortgage payments of $2,000 a month. What are you going to do with that money? So to reinvest in your workforce, and this is what will the sustainability plan for increased staff wages or enhanced benefits over the 2 to 4 years. These must be completed. And last but not least, down here, these are pretty self-explanatory. You are confirming this list, and this is your attestation. Type in your name. Make sure that you click done. When you click done, then it will pop up. I believe it might even say saved. I can't remember. So I'm going to stop sharing this. Let me go back to our PowerPoint. And share. Okay. So providing the documentation, you have to submit that expense documentation for your grant to be considered, your grant application to be considered complete. What that means is that, can everybody see that? I hope. What that means is that it,
Yes, we can.
okay, thanks. You need to send it via email to this email address. And please, 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 and I'll tell you more in a minute, please don't send us pictures taken with your phone, because we can't read it. And don't send it by Google Docs. Either scan it, or if it's an original email, say your contractor sent, you got an email from your contractor and or your bill and it shows that it's paid. But don't just send us a copy of an invoice that doesn't indicate that there was a payment made. Show us somehow that it's been made. If you have you have any questions, I don't know how to document something, let us know. We'll help you. Again, what I talked about, if it was ordered or contracted between March 3rd, 2021 and September 30th, that's considered an encumbered expense. How do you submit it? Your application must be completed through SurveyMonkey. Your documents need to be scanned or email originals, not pictures. If for some reason, and I totally understand this, if you can't email or scan something, you can mail it to me, but I have to have it in my hand no later than Wednesday, November 29th at 4 o'clock. So when the mail comes in, I'm going to check, and that's the cutoff date. So make sure that I have it. Also shoot us an email that says, hey, we sent our documentation to Diane, and we sent it on this date, and this is what we're sending. That way we know to look out for it. All the questions have to be answered. And as I said, if you're a family or child care home-based LE provider, make sure that you are telling us that that you consider yourself an employee. Now, one of the things I didn't put here is, and I am sorry that this was a requirement. This was a partnership grant, and so we weren't able to do a multi-site application. So any of you that are multi-sites, unfortunately, you have to do an individual application for each program. Other resources, the help desk link, as we said, is on that. This is the link, but you can go to this New Hampshire Connections website, the template for the application, the instructions and grant parameters. We'll put the FAQs, the virtual hour schedules will be there, and the webinar recording. In addition, what I didn't add to this is I'm meeting this afternoon with folks that are interested in being support for you all and a resource for helping you fill out applications. And we've got a pretty good representation across the state. So we'll post that list there of people that are able to help, whether it's regional leads or whether it's, some of your director coalition people. There's all sorts of people that are willing to help you in addition to us get those applications put together. So what accountability for this? First of all, there's final progress reports, and they're due September 30th, 2024. We are waiting for the final approval on the progress report template. That'll be posted on the same website. You're also going to, in the agreement, you're going to be agreeing to complete the data collection on NHCIS, any of the ARPA-D contract surveys. There's not a ton of them. And any other federal funds reporting. I do want to emphasize, and I'll emphasize on every call, that you need to go into NHCIS, make sure that your program profile is up to date. We're going to be adding new components very soon, and so you need to make sure that everything is up to date now, including working on your staff rosters. And that is the whole program, soup to nuts at this point. So I know this one's a little more complex than what we usually do. And we really appreciate the fact that the governor's office has earmarked this money for you all. and that we are being able to distribute it. As I said, I know it's complex, and so it's a little more than the um, I guess your average application process with a lot of questions. And so we are here to support you, and we are here to answer as many questions as possible. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to ask if Donna, can you run down some questions for me? Also, I want
Sure.
to, before we do that, I just want to remind you, our first virtual office hours are tomorrow night. Obviously we canceled today, and then we've got ongoing virtual office hours. In the next couple of weeks, I'm not really sure because we have to wait for governor and council approval. We'll have another grant that's going to be coming out. That's the $15 million that's focused on staff recruiting and retention. And I'll be combining those office hours because the application period is about the same period. So just for those of you who are going to be involved in that one. So what do you got, Donna, for questions?
So, two things that I want to state. First of all your questions, I am going to, any questions we don't get to, we are saving all of these questions and they will be addressed. So don't worry if I don't ask your questions. But I did want to also just ask that site that you mentioned on NH Connection. So if somebody has a specific question that's really more about their program, they can go there and ask that very specific question.
They can, that link you can put really, I mean,
Like,
it's,
am I qualified? Is this something
yep.
I should even be trying for? Like, am I eligible as, like, should I even be applying for this?
Yes. And don't feel like you got to fill out that whole form. There's a whole bunch of things on there. And you can go in as many times as you'd like and ask as many questions as you want. That's one place to do it. But the other place you can do it is just for this particular grant. You can send it to that CCOER grant at DHHS, and we'll put this in the chat, email address, and you can just send us an email with that question. We'll be answering them both ways. So it's just that it makes it really simple, honestly, for us to go in there, pull down all the SurveyMonkey questions at one time, and then literally, like it says, some of the things say, hey, I want information on the new funding. Some of them say, I have a very specific question about this grant. So you can use it for any of those things.
So quite a few people had questions around rent and mortgage rates, monthly rates that include K through 8, and how to separate that all out.
So, yeah, so
if they're working with public school as well as, they are also, they are themselves a licensed program.
Okay, so I would say there's two separate questions. One of the things that we didn't stipulate in there was that, and maybe we should have, was that you need to figure out, for example, if you're a family child care provider or if you're a program provider and you're providing care to children outside of the what we consider our birth to grade 5 group. Or if you're putting in for a mortgage for your whole home. So the answer to the question is you don't have to figure out the percentage. So let's say I run a program and I provide programming to children that are through grade 8, and my mortgage for the building is $3,000 a month. But if I got down and dirty and broke it down, then only 75% of the building is for children birth through grade 5. You don't have to figure out that one on this one. Just give us the whole mortgage rate. Same thing with your if you're a family child care provider or a license exempt provider. We're not going to go back and say, well, now, do you really, if I were providing family child care in my home, would I really have kids in the bedrooms? No, probably not. It would only be part of my house, but that's not something we ask. So we want the whole amount. In terms of the rental amounts, again, the rental amount is for the child care space. So if you rent a whole building or you own a whole building and your mortgage payment, and you've got, let's just say I've got the Works Bagel place in my building, and I've got a Market Basket in my child care center. No, you can't include the rent that's paid or the mortgage that you pay on the whole entire building if you own the whole entire building. It is for the child care program. So that you've got to do a little bit of calculation. Hopefully that answers that question.
So we don't include the taxes and insurance, just mortgage.
No, you can include the taxes and insurance. That's part of it. That's part of your operating expenses to provide the facility.
All right. There was a lot of questions around what to include when you're talking about expenses.
So go ahead, Donna.
Yeah. So just more clarification around what that looks like.
So I think I can answer that two ways. Just remember, it does not include what I call human human labor. For example, that's not your bus drivers and your teachers, and it's not your payroll tax and those sort of things. It is, what does it take to operate the program? That could be utilities, that could be your rent, your mortgage. It could be the fact that you redid your playground. It could be new equipment, furniture. It is not disposable supplies. It is not, it could be services. For example, if you needed, you pay a payroll company, that is an expense. That's not that doesn't mean paying the payroll, but if you pay ADT to process your payroll. So it is, again, think operations and not staffing and not people. Not benefits related to those people. And I'll do my very best in the FAQs to expand that. And as people ask us questions or as we work through applications where we run across things, and I have to tell you, this is not a grant that we designed necessarily. I mean, we had a role in it, but so when you ask these questions, I have to go back to kind of the source and say, what was your intention here? So that's why I'm being a little vague, because usually it's me knowing exactly the parameters. So I don't want to misspeak.
What about when we talked, there were certain things like you were saying it has to be between a certain timeline. What about a quote that was received during a specific timeline? There was a quote received for flooring, a project on flooring.
No, a quote does not constitute a contract. So you had to have secured a contract. So for example, if I put in new flooring in Chase's childcare and I signed the contract in April, but they didn't start work until September, I had incurred and then I paid for it in October or November. But I incurred the expense. But just a quote without an agreement and a contract, that you accepted it and that you, in other words, it's a guaranteed that you encumbered the expense. So it depends on how your contractor writes it. Now, I do know there's contractors that write a quote and you accept the quote. You're going to have to document that you accepted that quote. And I can give you an example. I'm replacing some flooring at my house. I got a quote from the contractor for a certain number of dollars. We'll just make it up. Let's say it was $2,000. He can't come and do my flooring until December, but I accepted in writing. Yes, I accept the quote. Yes, I accept the start date. I essentially, that serves as proof of a contract.
What about like electric heat or heating expenses? Does that qualify?
Yes, that does.
And repairs to playground, like adding fencing or adding new mulch, anything like that?
That is absolutely, yes, that counts.
And There's lots of new questions popping up. So lots of individual questions like heating pumps, replacing. Oh, and here's one. There was one to add it on to that. Written contract needed. What if plans for the project were verbal?
You don't have any way to document it. So I would go back and find documentation for that. Because yeah, you have to be able to document. You can't just say, yes, the landscaper said he's going to redo all the playground. There has to be a quote. There has to be a quote. It has to be documented. I am sorry, but I have got to jump because I have back-to-back meetings between now and 5:30.
Sure. So I'm
Appreciate.
taking all of these questions. Don't
Yep,
worry, your questions are not lost.
not at
I'm
all.
saving all these questions for you. Please feel free to add your last questions you would like to add, and I am saving them all. And I will send these all to Diane and to anyone who will collect these all for you. Thank you guys for all coming. And I will you will see on NHCIS that you have been given your I'm gonna say, can you see I maybe need a Snickers bar?
Yeah.
You've been given your credit for attending in NHCIS.
Terrific. All right, so we'll stop the recording if you don't mind hanging just for a few minutes, Donna. Please feel free, folks, to add questions and your information.